Okay, we are back. We are in this first part of our summer. We've met Cove, we've met Shiloh and Lizzie, and I think I'm just probably gonna do these in order, so let's just start with shopping. Cove's dad says, "Come back before it gets dark, all right, sport?" A familiar voice drifted across the street and drew your attention away from the snail you'd been watching inch slowly across the pavement. Cove waited in front of his dad, pushing his green hair back off his face from where the breeze was blowing it over his glasses. He looked to be paying only a mild amount of attention as he was being handed a few slips of green paper. It reminded you of when you first met Mr. Holden, although he's probably not paying Cove to be friends with himself. Cove's dad seemed to feel your gaze somehow, or maybe you made a noise because the second later his eyes were on you. He waved you over with a smile. He looked happy to see you, but you still felt a little weird for getting caught. You've got to learn how to be more sneaky. You brushed your hands together to free them of sand, then jogged over to join the two, smiling at Cove first and then his dad. Ollie, hi! Good to see you again. What excitement are you two up today? Taking a walk? I found a pretty cool snail across the road. There's lots of snails around here. Mr. Holden grinned at you kindly. After you finished answering the question, Mr. Holden's attention returned to Cove, who was preoccupied with folding the bills he had into a tiny rectangle. Sounds fun. You know, Cove was about to hit the stores by the beach. Why don't you go with him? He gave a ready nod, turning to squint in the direction of the stores like you could see the goods they had to offer all the way from where you stood. Oh, is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't mind. Great. I'm sure you guys will have loads of fun. Mr. Holden reached into his pocket and pulled out a leather wallet filled with money. He found it odd since your mom's only ever seemed to have cards in theirs. Here. He leaned in to pass on a crisp 10 to Cove, giving him a wink and a whisper. Get something for your friend, too. Sure. That's my boy. Cove's dad ruffled his son's hair as he was straightening back up. The bill in his hand still held out towards the green-haired boy. Take care. Cove accepted the bill after a second and slipped it into his pocket. Then, with one last nod to his dad, he turned and started walking. He followed after him, intrigued by the possibilities this outing might bring. Cove strayed towards the gentle tides creeping up the sand, and he fell into place behind him. It was a nice day. The sun was shining and there weren't many clouds in the sky, though the wind coming off the ocean kept it from being too hot. He took in a deep breath, enjoying the scent of salt and ocean air. When you looked at Cove, he was dragging his feet through the sand a little, and you slowed down to wait for him. Your eyes searched the ground intently. Are you looking for snails? Shells? What is it? Didn't feel the need to ask why. What is it? Nothing. You kept staring down at the ground, though. You bit down on your lip a little, wanting to say something else, but not knowing what. The comforting sound of the waves filled the silence with pleasant white noise, and you played a little game with yourself as you walked along, getting as close to the water as possible without getting wet. It resulted in you having to run up the sand quickly when a wave brushed in more than a few times, and although Cove threw a few glances your way, he didn't say a word. You didn't either. What did you want to go to the shops for? What do you usually do on the beach? Need a new sand pail. Yeah, what happened to your old one? Cove narrowed his eye and seemed to think deeply for a second. It disappeared. What, really? Cove ducked his head down, lacing his fingers behind his back. It didn't seem like he was going to continue, so you nudged his arm. How did that happen? Well, Cove opened his mouth and shut it again, considering. I took it to the beach one day. Uh-huh. When I got home, it wasn't anywhere. You left it there? Nope. It wasn't at the beach when I went back. Then you lost it. It disappeared. What about you? What do you do out here? I like swimming. I like looking at fish, sandcastles. I like to build sandcastles. Last summer, Lizzie and I built one that was as tall as me. Sometimes they have sandcastle building competitions down by the boardwalk. Cool. I bet you could win. I smiled at Cove. Maybe the two of you would build one together one day. Once you reached the shopping area, the noise level grew exponentially. No longer just waves and footsteps, but the chatter of people enjoying the lovely summer day, the call of birds trying to find bits of food left behind, and lots of salespeople trying to get attention. You sniffed the air as you walked beside Cove. You could still smell the ocean, but there were other scents now too. Pizza, pretzels, Hot donuts. It's alright. It's nice. The energy surrounding the area seemed to fill you, and there was a bounce in your step as you began looking at all the familiar sights. There were so many things to do. You didn't know where to begin. You looked at Cove, hoping he was just as excited as you were. Cove was glancing from one side of the street to the other with a look in his aquamarine eyes that you couldn't quite work out. What's that? Cove pointed to a large crowd of people gathered near a few tables with large, colorful umbrellas gleaming from their middles. You couldn't see past the adults who were blocking the way, but you knew there must be something worth seeing. Without another word, the two of you hurried over to see what all the commotion was about. Amazing Alexander! Feast your eyes on the amazing Alexander. In the center of the crowd was a man with a tall hat and a funny green coat that had 3 long tails. There was a little table next to him with a cloth hanging over it that read, "The Amazing Alexander," in glittery golden script. Why tell people his name if it's already on a sign? Cove hummed with understanding, then turned to walk away just as the Amazing Alexander began shuffling a deck of cards. Maybe we could stay and watch? Cove glanced back at the man, then briefly lifted his arms up off his sides before returning them to place. You grinned, waving for him to follow you as you raced back to stand in the crowd. With that, it began. The magic man pulled one card out of the deck, showing it to the curious onlookers. It was a 4 of diamonds. Watch closely. You did, squeezing through a few of the adult onlookers to get a better view. Suddenly, the man snapped his fingers and the card just disappeared. Whoa! The Amazing Alexander, who had earned his title, turned his head and looked directly at you. He reached out with a kind smile. What's this behind your ear? Nothing? It was true, you didn't keep anything there. He smelled the popcorn and candy when he stepped. He smelled like popcorn and candy when he stepped closer, and he wrinkled your nose in confusion as you watched him. You felt a tug, and then he pulled the 4 of diamonds out from behind your ear. What? You knew that it couldn't really have come from your ear, but you still didn't know how he'd done it. There was a light applause from the crowd, and the man gave a deep bow. This is for you. The magician plucked a pair of balloons from a clump of them tied down to his stable. Both were in the shape of a dolphin instead of being a normal circle. One for your friend, too. Thank you for being my assistant. Wow. Now you are really grateful he chose you. After that, he went to someone else in the crowd. Pick a card. Any card. My uncle does that every time he visits. Not the balloons. The stuff with the cards. Cove spoke plainly while reaching over to take the dolphin that had been designated for him. Maybe it wasn't so special. Cove's just ruining the fun. At least she had a fun time. Wondered if Cove's whole family was magic. You saw a magic trick and you got a great balloon. That was more than enough to make it a worthwhile event. You thought that if you could find a card to practice with, maybe you could make it disappear too. The crowd started to clear some, and you noticed to the side there was a whole rack of brightly colored kaleidoscopes on display. I picked up a kaleidoscope. Oh, these are cool. You shifted your balloon string to your other hand so you could bring the mysterious tunnel to your eye. A whole palette of colors appeared right in front of you, spinning into all kinds of different shapes as you twisted the end of the tube. Cove picked up one to look through, twisting the tube at the end. After a second, he set it back on the rack, moving to the other side of the stall. He went under the awning, careful of his own floating dolphin, and you joined him. Did you have places like this in your old town? Are you having fun? We'll ask him about his old town. Cove blinked at you for a moment, and you wondered if you shouldn't have asked. You knew how much he missed that place. Aw, shit. Not really. You nodded in understanding, looking over at the stalls nearby. Oh, they're so cute! While Cove looked at the sand pails, you were drawn to a table with colorful keychains laid out on it. They were soon in the shape of sea creatures, and there was a plaque that read, "Handmade," standing proudly in front. There were lots of different types. You saw a turtle, dolphin, a shark, a crab. Picked up dolphin, shark, crab, turtle. I want turtle. Your hand stopped on the sleeping turtle, just barely poking its head out of the shell. You had flecks of metallic green on its back that caught the sunlight when you picked it up. You remembered the turtles you had seen in a movie. You had been mesmerized by the way they gently glided through the water. You were instantly enamored. Checking the price, though, your heart fell. $6! You didn't know much about money, but you knew that was a lot to spend on one thing. You rarely had more than $5 billed to your name. Though that changed the day you met Cove and his dad, you still had the $20 bill Mr. Holden gave you hidden away in your room. It was a grand sum of money, but you couldn't spend something that was at home instead of your pocket. Maybe you'd have to ask your moms to bring you here again one day now that you knew what you wanted. Is that what you want? Huh? Oh, it's $6. I didn't bring any money. It's fine. Are you sure you don't have to? Really? Hooray. I kind of want to pick either are you sure or you don't have to. I'm gonna do are you sure. Cove took the keychain from your hands and that was that. He was holding a small yellow bucket for himself too. I was always gonna get you something. I already got the money for it. He smiled, pleased to have things worked out. It was nice of Cove's dad to let Cove buy something for you too. You had to remember to thank him next time you saw him. After Cove paid, the two of you stepped out to the store side by side, your balloon dolphins knocking together and spiraling around in the air. You watched Cove hold up his new pail to his face, examining it thoroughly. Hey, Cove. Yeah? Your dad gives out a lot of money, huh? I'm not gonna say that. I really like this keychain. Thank you. It's nice. Cove looked further down the street where different food carts were lined up. He rested his non-cast arm over his stomach, and just as he did, yours let out a light growl. You hadn't eaten since breakfast, and after all of this wandering around, you were definitely ready for some lunch. Let's get some food. Yeah. You two wandered around a short while, looking at all the delicacies that were available. Everything looked delicious, and as the different smells, both sweet and salty, wafted over to you, your stomachs growled even louder. After passing up hot dogs, snow cones, ice cream, and pizza, you both agreed on pretzels. Cove got something sweet and cinnamony, and you... plain cheese, sprinkles, chocolate. I'm gonna get cheese. You licked your lips hungrily as the vendor handed your pretzel over, ready to take a big bite. It was covered in gooey melted cheese just the way you'd like it. It seemed odd to get a dessert pretzel before eating normal food. You found an empty table close enough to the beach that the grit of the sand made terrible noises when you dragged the chairs out to sit down. These balloons are gonna make it hard to eat. Cove placed his bucket on the table as he stared at his still balled up hand that was wrapped around the string. You opened your mouth to agree before an idea hit you. I know. After carefully placing your pretzels somewhere it wouldn't get sandy, you tugged the balloon dolphin out of Cove's hand and tied it in a delicate bow around his wrist. Oh! Cove bounced his arm up and down in place, testing the stability of your knot. After watching his balloon jostle around but remain attached, he smiled, satisfied. Can you do it for me? He repeated the ritual. Cove struggled somewhat with the cast, restricting his fingers on the one hand and a string already tangled around the other. Got it. The two of you spent a moment admiring your handiwork, both hands now free to allow easy munching on your pretzels. You bit into the doughy treat, savoring the taste on your tongue with a smile as you looked out over the ocean. After a time you finished your pretzel. You were done before Cove. It was boring not having anything to do. You pulled on the string of your balloon to bring it down to your level. Then you held the dolphin in your hands, manipulating it to make it look like it was jumping through the air. If you turned to face towards the beach, it almost looked like it was swimming in the waves like a real dolphin. A laugh came from your side. When you glanced back at Cove, he had left the remaining parts of his pretzel on the wrapper, and he was gripping his dolphin too. Mine's name is Merryweather. He's the prince of the dolphins. Name's Splash, they star in movies. Cherry, she's actually an alien. Name is Sam, they're just a regular dolphin. I want to be the prince of the dolphins. He wears a crown made of seaweed and all his friends are merfolk. Every now and then he'll make friends with a kid and let them ride on his back. He sighed, wishing you could meet a real dolphin like Merryweather. What's yours? Cove considered this question, placing the balloon against the table and resting his free arm across it in contemplation. It's... With a loud pop, the dolphin exploded into ribbons. Oh no! For a second, all Cove did was gape in shock like you. Then his cheeks puffed up, squinting his eyes, and you saw tears start to glisten. Oh, You made a joke. You offered to find Alexander. You offered to give Cove your balloon. You didn't say anything. He would be alright. I'm gonna give him my balloon. You looked at Cove and then up at your balloon, bobbing gently in the air above you. You can have mine. That was better than letting him cry more. Cove sniffled, glancing up at the balloon, then back at you. No, it's yours. I don't want to take it from you. It's okay, really. Cove shook his head. Even though it wasn't your fault, you felt bad. Still, the offer seemed to lift Cove's spirits, and that was good. Passing of Cove's balloon was the last major event of your adventure. In the end, the two of you headed back late that afternoon. You separated on the beach, and while Cove went straight home with his brand new sand pail in hand, you decided to sit for a while. You watched the waves and the sunset, fiddling with your new keychain. Another summer day was drawing to a close. It had been a good one, except for the sad final note. Aww. That was so sad. Alright, let's do grown up. One sweltering summer day, you were in your living room with Cove, listening to the sound of the birds chattering outside the window while you lay across the rug on the floor. Cove's dad had dropped him off earlier, and your moms had left the two of you, along with Lizzie, to play amongst yourselves. It had been too hot to go outside in the afternoon, at least according to Mommy, so your sister was starting to get impatient waiting for her golf class that evening. The three of you had trouble finding something fun to do. The beach and the playground were off limits, and you felt that it was too warm for anything like playing with your fuzzy toy animals. Then suddenly, a light came to Lizzie's big brown eyes, and her smile spread wide across her face. Having an idea gave her a new wave of energy. Since we're stuck inside, we should be adults. They don't play outdoors anyway. They're always inside and telling everybody they're too busy to play. Why? I said why, and it'll be fun, duh. What do they do inside that we don't, besides use the phone a lot? Excluding a small huff, Lizzie decides to ignore Cove. Ollie, what do you think? What do you want to do? Cove said it. That doesn't sound fun. I bet we could come up with something else. I don't know. I want to. I'm gonna do I don't know. Please, Ollie. When have I ever had a bad idea? Whenever we play with you? I wasn't asking you. Let's say I kept hesitating. You looked down at your hand, still unsure. Apparently tired of waiting for you to make up your mind, Lizzie sighed. Fine, go play over there, Ollie. You flinched from her raised voice. It definitely wouldn't be fun to join now. Me and Cove will do it ourselves, it's decided. He looked back at you regretfully. Yes. Now go on. Nodding goodbye to the two of them, you trailed off to find something else to do. Like he promised, Cove stayed put with Lizzie for the next couple of hours while you want to build a fort. You could hear them talking as you raced to your room to take the pillows and blankets from your bed. When you went back downstairs, you also took a couple of cushions from the sofa and found a spare blanket in the hallway cupboard. The dining room was a perfect place for building a fort. When you pulled out the chairs and covered them with blankets, you had plenty of room beneath the table to do whatever you wanted. You had just scattered the pillows inside the fort to make it more comfortable when you heard Lizzie and Cove's voices again, and this time they were much louder. Curious about what was happening, you craned your neck to hear them better. At first, you mostly only picked up on Lizzie's high-pitched shouting, giving orders, telling Cove what to do, yelling about sports and the Olympics. That was pretty typical for Lizzie, so there's nothing new there. But then you started to hear Cove more and more as time went on. It sounded like they weren't having a very good time. I went out to see what's going on. You abandoned your pillow fort to go check on what was happening with them. Hey, is something wrong? From up close, you could see that your sister was red-faced and pouting, while Cove mostly just looked confused. Neither one paid you any mind. Shut up, Cove. You're being so unreasonable. You don't get what you want. This game doesn't make sense. It does. You have to be realistic. I said that. But you're not? You're worried that the two of them were getting a little too angry over whatever it was. You had no idea what to do to make them stop at this point. It seemed like the two of them would just keep working each other up as long as they could. Had the two of them been arguing like this the whole time? Thankfully, like a greeting card angel, Mom walked into the room. Lizzie rushed to her, hanging onto the hem of her shirt and poking out her tongue at Cove. Lizzie, Ollie, it's time to get ready to go. Sorry you have to leave already, Cove. Their mommy said she'll walk you home so you won't be left in the cold. Cove was still glaring at Lizzie, his face flushed red with anger. I can go by myself. But bye, Ollie. There was still a harsh edge to the brief farewell, but you knew it wasn't you he was mad at. So when I made those choices, I kind of thought that Cove would have done whatever I did. I didn't know I was like electing to go play by myself. Without giving Mom a chance to stop him, Cove stood up and walked out of the room, shoulders drawn tight. Okay. Worried, Mom turned to look down at you and Lizzie. You two were playing nice with our new friend, weren't you? I told the truth. We were playing pretend and things got intense. They were like cats and dogs. Your sister's jaw dropped, looking betrayed as Mom put both hands on her hips. Elizabeth, I told you to be kind to him. He's having a hard time right now. Lizzie's mouth closed back up, replaced by a tiny frown. I know I tried, but he was... No buts. We both know you can show someone a great time when you put your mind to it. We're going to apologize to Cove and his dad over the phone when he gets home from work tonight. Lizzie hung her head, dragging a foot across the ground in front of her. Okay, Mom. Good girl. You got pieces of Lizzie sulking to herself about how it was his fault too, but it was over. Alright, we better get a move on. Let's go, kids. Noelani? Where did you leave the car keys? Mom hustled you all out the door, and you noticed during the car ride to golf practice that Lizzie was quieter than usual. She was usually the first one to request which music to listen to in the car, but she didn't say anything. Your parents noticed she wasn't in the mood to be bothered. They gave her space, and Mommy just asked you what you'd like to listen to. Picked your favorite song it always made the car ride more fun. Chose the soundtrack to a cool movie you saw a couple months ago. I'm gonna pick a song I like. Eventually, Lizzie came around and started singing aloud with you. You both knew all the words, and your moms even sang along too. When the car ride was over, you spent the twilight hour watching Lizzie hit things with other girls her age. You didn't know much about golf, but you could tell that she really liked it. So you sat with your moms and tried to puzzle it out. It was nice sitting outside after being cooped up in the house all day, and you stretched out your legs to let the last few minutes of sun warm your skin. When the sun was finally out of sight, dipping behind the horizon, you all got ready to leave. Instead of going straight home, your moms took the family out to dinner. You went to a restaurant you had all been going to ever since you can remember. Earlier, you only caught the tail end of your sister's argument with Cove, but you could kind of tell that all this helped Lizzie be less angry. The car ride home was quiet, with only the radio providing escape from silence. Lizzie had been in better spirits now, but the closer you got to your neighborhood, the more she wiggled in her seat and frowned out the window. She knew what was coming when you all got back home. Clearly she was dreading it. Soon enough, Mom was turning onto your street and reversing into the driveway. When she cut the ignition, it was dead silent. No one spoke, only unbuckled their seatbelts and opened the doors. Lizzie was the last one out. Once everyone was inside and done taking off their shoes, she propped her hands on her hips. Now then, Mr. Holden's car is in his driveway, so he should be back from work. That's good news, isn't it, Elizabeth? You and Cove can hash things out before the day's done. Lizzie didn't complain or put up a fight. Her head ducked so she didn't have to meet anyone's eyes, and she nodded once. Good. Let's move this to the kitchen. Mom went over to the house phone, the rest of you following behind her. Mommy put a gentle hand on Lizzie's shoulder as she walked side by side. You watched them from the back. This was only happening because you told on Lizzie. You hadn't liked doing it but had to. That's kind of what I want to pick. Being a tattletale didn't feel good, and you didn't want someone else to tell your moms everything you did. Still, your mom had asked directly, and you wanted to be a liar even less. The four of you stood around the kitchen in a lopsided square. All eyes were on Lizzie, who kept her gaze on her feet. You remember the number for Cove's house, don't you, honey? Lizzie jerked her head in a nod. Sullen, without further prompting, she stepped forward and she began to dial. Mom reached over and pressed a button on the base. Suddenly, you could hear the phone ringing. She turned on the speaker. The phone rang a couple of times, then stopped. Mr. Holden's warm voice came through the other end. Evening, Holden residence. Lizzie looked over at Mommy, unsure. She nodded encouragingly. Hi, Mr. Holden. It's, Lizzie. Can I talk to Cove? Lizzie best. What a surprise. But of course you can say hey to the boy. He sounded cheery as usual, though definitely meant it when he said it was a surprise. You thought hard, and you were sure that your sister had never called Cove's house before. Mom spoke up before Mr. Holden or Lizzie could say anything more. Her arms were crossed over her chest and her lips pursed. Hi, Cliff. Noelani, Ollie, and I are here too. Good evening. We're sorry to bother you so late. I spoke up to say hello. Hi, Mr. Holden. The gang's all here, huh? Is something the matter? His voice grew a bit concerned. Mommy was quick to reassure him. No, well, yes, but it's going to be okay. Lizzie and Cove got into a bit of a fight today. We were hoping that the two of them could talk and make up. Is this a good time for you and Cove? Fight? Cove didn't tell me anything about that when I came home. It does explain the funk he's been in tonight. He chuckled lightly. Despite that, it didn't seem like he really thought it was funny. Anyway, it's good you didn't catch us at a bad time. I'll go grab him for you. There was some shuffling on the other end. He must not have gone too far because you could still hear him calling out. Cove, there's someone on the phone for you. After a beat of silence, there was more muffled talking from Cove's dad. Come on, bud. Lizzie called so she could talk to you. Ollie's on the other end listening too. Don't you want to say hi? It took a bit of back and forth, though. The conversation seemed one-sided since you couldn't hear Cove properly. Eventually, Cove took the phone from his dad. Hello? Hey, it's Lizzie. Yeah, I know. Dad told me. Cove's tone was defensive. Lizzie turned to Mom, scowling. One stern look from her, though, and Lizzie turned away. I just called to say I'm sorry for not playing nice with you today. I won't do it again. Lizzie's eyes were downcast, her voice low. You could tell she felt uncomfortable apologizing to Cove in front of everyone. She was still being genuine about feeling bad. Cove must have realized that too because he sighed quietly. Okay, I guess I'm sorry too. A sense of relief washed over everyone at his acceptance of the apology. Mom uncrossed her arms while Mommy's shoulders relaxed. Lizzie's eyebrows raised up. You wonder if she thought that he'd refuse her apology. Dad, can I get off the phone now? Couldn't see him, but it was obvious that Cove felt awkward about the situation. He'd come off uncomfortable the entire time, really. Yeah, you can go back to your room if you want. Be sure to say goodbye first, though. Bye, Lizzie. Bye. Bye, Ollie. You perked up at the mention of your name. You smiled, even if he couldn't see it. Bye, Cove. With that, Cove must have handed the phone to his dad and left, since Mr. Holden spoke up.
That's a relief.
All's well that ends well, as they say. Thanks for arranging this. I'm sure he appreciates it. As Mom replied, Lizzie tugged on Mommy's hand to catch her attention. Can I go now, too? Sure, sweetie. Thank you very much for apologizing to Cove. Mom flashed a brief smile at Lizzie and nodded in her agreement. Given permission to leave, Lizzie scurried off towards the stairs. She seemed to be feeling much better with the incident behind her. Mom and Mommy returned to the phone. Taking it off the speaker, they continued talking to Mr. Holden. You couldn't tell what about. You were glad that was the end of it all. Lizzie and Cove might not get along and probably still won't, but they weren't mad at each other anymore. Mom and Mommy weren't upset either. Everything was finally back to normal. With that thought, you retreated to your own room with a spring in your step. Oh, okay. Well, here's what I think I'm gonna do. There's 10 moments. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do 2 per episode. And then we will end the summer. So next time we will do a long day and sandcastle. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.